My name is Emil Frei. I am a fifth-generation stained glass craftsman. I am also German, so we are very prompt, and it is now 3 o'clock.
Very good.
So, I've been invited here to talk to you all about stained glass, especially as it pertains to the window that we installed here, oh goodness, 5 years ago? 6? Wow, okay. Wow, okay. I'm going to go into a bevy of things here. I am, as I told Emma, I'm a little bit long-winded. I can talk interminably, so I'm not German in that respect. My mom is Irish-Italian. That's where I inherited from. As a starting point, I would like to talk to you simply about the studio. So the family studio that created this window, and of which, as I mentioned, I am the 5th generation. And just for confirmation, can everyone hear me okay? Okay. I took over the studio from my father in 2016. And it was my great-great-grandfather who founded it. And before I get too much into that, I'm going to say this. I have 98 slides. We are not going to look at all 98 slides. One of my hopes is that, or at least the primary purpose for being invited today, is to speak upon the window that graces your space. So often, in many of the communities we work with, you can come in, you can come out on a very regular basis, every week, if not every day, and you can appreciate the beauty that surrounds you without taking a very concentrated focus upon it. And I feel like that is a shame. I speak about it being a shame because it's, for an artist or craftsman who actually creates it, there's a lot that goes into every single design that we do. We do not do anything twice, at least not in the exact manner. Everything that we create is for a specific space, a specific community, a specific location within the church. A window in the altar or sanctuary area will be much different than a window that we design and create for, say, a confessional or a narthex or a nave window. So I want, if anything, I would love if you, next time you go into a church, to concentrate upon not just the stained glass, but, of course the stained glass, but of all the sacred art that adorns a space. This is the gift that prior generations, current generations, future generations have given to the entire community. So, that said, I'm going to speak at the beginning about the material beauty of stained glass, after I talk about the studio history. And then I'm going to go into a very quick synopsis of what goes into a design. After that, I'm going to focus on the particular design that rests behind us. And at that point, I will ask us all to turn around or to move to that area. Because I do think that art is meant to be engaged up close and personal, intimately. That it's not to be just passed by. So I think this is something that, if nothing else, I hope that this really resides with you after this talk for a renewed appreciation for it. I'm going to try to do two things. I'm going to try to speak somewhat quickly. I'm also going to try not to trip over these chords. So if I do a face plant, it's recorded. So as I mentioned, I am the 5th generation. If you go throughout most churches in St. Louis, if they're beautiful, they're most likely Emil Frei. But I say that tongue-in-cheek, but the sheer statistic is around, I would say, 70% of the notable churches in St. Louis were done by my family. And I say that with pride. I also say it with humility, because it does exact a very heavy pressure on my generation to live up to that standard. And we'll go through some of those churches today. This one is down in Soulard. It's St. Peter and Paul Catholic Church. It's oddly enough not a church that my family did, only because it was done before we existed. But it is very tall church, and we have restored the windows over many a generation. So I like to say at the outset that our studio history is one marked by providence. And this is a great example. Now, you're at a distance, so you can't see everything in this picture, but I will kind of point out some details here. This is back in the late 70s, early 80s. You can tell by the cars.
Yes.
And we were restoring and plating the windows. Okay, what you see here is 5 or 6 sections of scaffold with a 60-foot ladder going up, and then some scaffold boards on the outside of those ladders. What you probably can't see, if you're familiar with this area of Soulard, there is actually a wrought iron gate at the base with some spiked daggers as the top. And so I like to say that Providence has assured that I am here today. God is happy with the work we're doing, because the 2 men at the top there are my father and my grandfather. Somehow, years of doing this has still not shut us down. This is also very outside the limitations of OSHA's timeline, so I feel confident in showing this. My great-great-grandfather, Emil Frei Sr., was actually able to procreate with a facial hair like this. And yet he did. So that's a great thing. But also it's always been a family environment, a family trade. If you look at most stained glass studios, they are actually a family-run business. And we're not uncommon in that we are ourselves a family-run business, but we are uncommon that we go back 5 generations. And there's a reason for that. I've never seen really a stained glass school that teaches how to do this craft. And it's partially because it is such a niche industry. You know, the money is in creating icons and graphics for digital platforms today. So for your iPhones or big public pieces of art, fewer and fewer churches are going up, which means it's harder and harder competition. But this is me down here as a 15-year-old with my grandfather, who taught me many of the skills I know, and my father, and then my uncle, who passed away just a couple years ago from ALS. It's always been a family thing. I currently work with 3 of my siblings. My dad still works today. He's actually down in Muskogee, Oklahoma on scaffolding, installing frames for a massive installation we're doing that needs to be done in 2 weeks. Pray for us. I'm just going to go through a couple things. A lot of what's in the mind of people when we are designing windows is that somehow we're good little monks at a desk hearing the inspiration, the beautiful ideas that are whispered into our ears from angelic voices, similar to this Caravaggio painting of the inspiration of St. Matthew. The greater reality is something more like this, that you are doing hard, serious, sweaty work. This is a craft as much as it is an art. And I think we've lost the distinction between those two trades, and then also the interrelation between them. And hopefully some of that comes out as well. Material beauty. The windows that we, as our family, have always used and has been used in the Gothic ages, going back to the 10th century, has been mouth-blown glass. It is the nicest glass ever produced, even with advent and inventions in the industrial age. We have not found a way to make glass look more beautiful than by the hand or the mouth-blown process. And so I think that bears some attention today. And we'll get into some of that right now. I brought one prop. I didn't realize there would be so many people, so if you do want to move up to the sides, that's fine too. I won't hold it up against you. We do not blow the glass ourselves in the studio. They come to us in big sheets from Europe, almost exclusively from Europe. So our biggest supplier is in Germany, but we also get it from France and Poland. And in the window back here, it is largely German glass, and there was one producer in the United States out of West Virginia called Blanco that produced some high quality glass. They have since kind of quieted or shut down their sheet glass production. They do more tabletop vases and such now. But this is such a skill in and of itself that we do not do it. But it's remarkable. Here are just a couple of different steps in it, and I just wanted to kind of describe this as quickly as possible so that you can appreciate what goes into a window before we even touch the glass. All right. So in your upper left-hand corner, I'm going to walk around here so I can look at this as well. In your upper left-hand corner, you have the kilns where all of the silica, so glass is mostly sand, is being heated up to around 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit. At which point, if you come within around 10 feet of that front face, it's too hot to really be there. I know this because I was there last year, and within 20 feet of it, you start sweating beads. So the guys that produce this are really incredible men. I mean, just incredible. They mix that sand, that silica, with some metals. The metals are what produce the colors in stained glass. So when you see, this is just to dispel any kind of misunderstanding, we are not ourselves, as the stained glass artisans, we are not injecting color into the glass. That is being produced by the glass blowers themselves. So the silica is being heated up with a mixture of a certain metal. So that metal, like let's say cobalt, produces a blue. And then copper and iron produce a green. And then actually rubies, which are our most expensive color to purchase, are produced by gold. What happens is that when the sunlight travels through the metal composition, it will only admit one wavelength of the sunlight to come through. So it blocks it absorbs every other wavelength of sunlight. And so when the sunlight, the wavelengths of the sun come through gold, it's only the red that you can see. Which is also why, if you put your hand up on stained glass after it's been in the sun, it's remarkably hot. It's absorbing all of the energy of the sun, except for one wavelength, and then emitting that energy through the form of heat. So in your darker pieces, if you put your hand up there on it, which I don't recommend because you're going to leave your oil prints on it, but if you did, you could only rest your hand on that glass for around 3 or 4 seconds. It's so hot. It doesn't hurt the glass. So that's being when the upper left is when it's being heated up. They will then stick a pipe into that vat and then collect what's called a gather. It's a small ball at the end of the pipes. Right? And a lot of you have probably seen some glass blowing if you've been to Murano Island, or Milton, West Virginia. Up in Seattle, they've got some glass blowing companies too. But when they'll collect what's called a gather, a small ball, and then they'll slowly start blowing out the pipe, and it expands that bubble. And then when it gets to be a big enough bubble, they'll stand on a raised platform and they'll start swinging that pipe. And that motion will stretch out, that centrifugal motion will stretch out the ball to a longer and longer cylinder. And I just brought a miniature one here today. So when they do that, you have basically a cylinder. But now imagine at this point, there's still a base at the end, and then it's still attached to the pipe right here. So in order to separate it from the pipe while it's still hot, they'll take some copper scissors and just cut away where it's attached to the pipe, and then they'll cut away at the base. So now you have an open cylinder. Great. How do you get this into a flat sheet?
Yes.
All right, so what they do is they'll actually take a glass cutting wheel, they'll score it, they'll let this cool down, they'll score it along the length, and then they'll put it flat on an annealing tray, or on a tray, and put it back into an annealing oven. And at that point, they'll take what is basically, I'm going to try not to trip over this either, they'll take what is pretty much a garden hoe as it starts to heat up, and they'll just unfold it along that score line until it rests on the tray. At that point, you have a flat sheet of glass. This is how it's been done, ladies and gentlemen, since the 9th century, and this is still the best way. There are efforts to use machine-made glass, but the quality is not even close to what the man-made glass is, because the real beauty of the man-made glass is in its imperfections. And I say imperfections, right? It doesn't mean it's imperfect, it means it's unique. Just like, there's no two snowflakes in mouth-blown glass, because there's just such minute differences in the body of the motion of a body even in one individual, but especially if you have multiple glass blowers going, you're going to have different stretch marks, striations within each glass, and different amount of bubbles. So I think this is one of those things that I would invite you, when you look at this window, like look at each piece and observe it and say like, okay, this is incredible that there's no stretch here of 3 or 4 inches that is exactly the same. It's all different. And there's different textures, especially in the window you have back there. So this, I was, just a small disclaimer, I'm the one who cut this window. So if you don't like it, I don't want to hear it. No, just kidding. That was at the forefront of my mind. It's by using a variety of textures, some that allow your vision to pass all the way through, some that obscure it a little bit more at the surface, which gives it a more three-dimensional effect. And it's just as you move your head. Now, unfortunately, we're at an elevated position with this window, so you don't have the luxury of nearby trees swaying in the wind. But you've got some in the distance. But you'll notice the variety of texture as you move your head, and that background silhouette is playing with that glass. It's a remarkable thing. And so I just want to describe a couple of the textures within this window. You see up here on your right side is a window or a piece of glass that's called CD glass. That's characterized by many, many bubbles within the window. And I used a lot of that in this particular window itself. Most of those bubbles are actually produced by a potato. When they are making that molten silica, they'll throw a potato into that vat, and the moisture within the potato will cause a spontaneous combustion. I kid you not. And then that explosion, during the course of that explosion, it creates air pockets in this taffy-like silica. Well, then the residue or the material of the potato burns off, but those air pockets are retained. So then they continue to blow it out, and then you're left with these bubbles which refract light at different angles. The sheet on the left, which I use a lot of in this as well, especially on the perimeters, is called a Remy glass. It's characterized by very strong lines, very strong striations throughout, and then very big bubbles that are called oxides, so like the eye of an ox. And they just create a beautiful ripple effect in the background. And there's a ton of other materials or textures that are there, especially a crackle glass, and we can look at that a little bit more closely. And by using a variety of those textures, what you do is you create a beautiful three-dimensional object. So this is a detailed shot of a window we did down in Dallas, St. Vincent de Paul. The rest of the body is obviously continuing down. But then the outside environment becomes a part of that design, right? So the trees, this is just clear glass here, but it looks green because the trees are coming through. And here is one of my favorite parts of stained glass. It is the most dynamic of all art mediums because it is a transmitted light medium. Every other medium of art that you encounter is using reflected light. The light bounces off a surface, hits you back in the eye, which is why when you go to a museum, light that's inside is very important, which is also why in stained glass, it's awful. You want to be viewing the stained glass from the darker side. You want an imbalance of light. Right? So if you've been lucky enough to go to Chartres Cathedral or Notre Dame in France, Or even, let's say, St. Francis de Sales down here in St. Louis. Those are dark interiors. They are, admittedly. But that's also why the stained glass seems to have this dramatic impact upon the space. Because it is a darker interior that's being almost solely illuminated by the power of the sun, in which that sunlight changes throughout the course of a day, throughout the course of a year, depending on the position of the sun. Your winter sun is far different than your summer sun. So you get this echo image, the light kind of refracting through a window that will actually land or rest on different spots within the church during the course of a year. And that makes it different than anything else. I'll just go through a couple. So this is a good example. So in De Pere, at St. Paul's Lutheran, they have 3 windows in their sanctuary. And most people don't really notice these windows because they're up in the chancel area and they're up high. And so and they're in line with your vision. So you're not looking directly at them, but they're more peripheral. But you do notice it when the sun is streaming through it because they have an apse, kind of a curved back wall. And this is the image that it projects on that more or less kind of boring brick wall, then it travels throughout the course of the day. At 10 o'clock, it's at a different position than it is at 10:30, than it is at 11, than it is 12. You don't really ever see it move, obviously, but if you leave for a half hour and come back, it's in a totally different position. This is amazing, right? And this is also why, in many respects, we get a lot of requests about, can you backlight a window? Yes, you can, and it will be still very beautiful, but you do lose this aspect of the beautiful glass. And this is what yet another example is that the light that basks in here. If I were to take a photograph of this same location a half hour later, this light would have been up here. It's fantastic. And this is also another thing I appreciate pointing out. During the day, we obviously appreciate the colors and the beauty of the window from the inside. At nighttime, what does that window look like? It's black, right? It's dark outside, it's bright in here. So again, you're viewing it now from the brighter side when you're inside. However, I was telling Emma that I love driving at night, on the interstate here. I've almost gotten into a couple wrecks because of it. Also, people drive like mad out here. But I'm always looking right at this location because I want to see if the lights are on because it looks beautiful from the interstate because it's dark outside. So at College Church, that was one of our tasks. They wanted something beautiful from the inside. Not College Church, I'm sorry. This is the new SLU Hospital on South Grand. They wanted something beautiful from the inside, but being on South Grand, they also wanted it to be a beacon at night. And so this was our pleasure to show them, okay, yeah, we can do this. And it is gorgeous. So this is right at dusk. As you drive past South Grand, take a quick look. It's got to be a pretty quick look because the buildings are built up so much. But take a quick look to your left if you're going north, and you will see this. And it is remarkable. And it kind of, obviously the Christian overtone here with the metaphor of light, that Christ is the light that shines in the darkness. This is one of my favorite things about stained glass. Color, we can go in through all sorts of things here with color. But one of the principal matters I want to talk about is the importance of gray. So color is what we almost always initially think of when we're thinking of stained glass. Oh, these beautiful bright colors. And it's true, it grabs your attention. However, if you introduce too much color, it is aggressive, it is almost painful to look at. So I put down here, this is not an Emil Frei job, okay? I just need to use that as a disclaimer. There's no such thing as an ugly color. Just like in music, there's no such thing as an ugly note. There are bad combinations of notes. There are bad combinations of color, right? And so on this occasion, and I don't like to bash whoever did this, I don't even know who did this, they went with just very bright reds, almost strictly bright reds, and then strictly bright orange yellows, and then strictly green green colors, tones of it. Going back to our analogy of music, it's like having a symphony that is nothing but like a crescendo. So maybe a little bit Wagner, right? I like Bach. I like a crescendo. I like also a quiet period, a peaceful period. And that really, going down the line here, so this is St. Margaret of Scotland. Notice just how much of this window is actually just gray. You know, there's still a strong presence of red and blue, but proportionally, it's mostly gray and light tints. And that is what gives rise to this beautiful portrait of St. Margaret of Scotland, and then the angels that are up in the heavens. If everything was as bright as the center, she would be lost. So color is important in many respects to punctuate, like bright colors, to punctuate a point, not to have the whole conversation being delivered in a shouting match. Let's see, what else do I have here? Color also has great symbolic value. So in most of your traditional cathedrals of Europe, and even in up to like 1940s America, the east transept was almost always devoted to Mary and is almost always blue. And the west transept, if it's north-south facing church, is almost always red. Well, why is that? In the morning, your color of light is in the atmosphere is bluer, right? So you're taking advantage of that cleaner light, that bluer hue of light. In the evening, as the setting sun is doing its thing, you have all the atmospheric dirt, or dust, which creates a more red hue of light. So you're kind of reinforcing that as well. Also, the west facing is always Christ, the east facing is always Marian. So there's great imagery, great symbolism in this. And also, color has great symbolism just metaphorically. So in 13th, 14th century France, the cross was always depicted as green. Well, why? It's because it was the tree of life. Right? Life is depicted most consciously in our minds as green. So Christ died on the cross so that we may have life. Therefore, the cross was depicted as green. And it's this kind of imagination, especially in the Gothic age, that really gave rise to stained glass exploding, right? And then during the 16th and 17th century, there was a regression, unfortunately. But we continue to use this. This is actually just across the interstate by Priory at Lutheran Hour Ministries. Siegfried did these windows. He was an artist for our studio. I love the usage of color here. This is the conversion of Saul. So it's God kind of in this beam of light calling out to Saul. So that red light is more aggressive. And as you get to Saul, it starts to soften, but then it turns blue, because blue is more of a recessive color. This is Saul somewhat resisting. And yet the lead lines are still calling him in to God. So there's both this resistance, but also inevitable attraction, right? Which leads to him going from Saul to Paul. Oh, symbolism. Okay, I know. Okay, it's 3:36 right now. I'm doing really good with my time, by the way. This is my favorite topic of conversation here, because I did my master's in theology, and this is the most fun for me to talk about. We have many different ideas of what a symbol is. And I think a lot of it is, a book or Bible equals the Word of God. A sword equals martyrdom. Our palm equals martyrdom. We forget that symbolism is actually a much larger idea. It's poetry, right? There's something going on there that's stressing our mind, challenging us to think about the mystery of God. Because God, in his essence, is a mystery to us, a beautiful mystery, but a mystery nonetheless. We cannot fully articulate infinite nature and love. So how do we get to that? We use words, we use images, but they're all falling short. But the great thing about symbols is that they still respect that mystery. So if I did a picture of Christ, it might strike you as too stern, and it might strike you as too sweet. The same image. However, if you use an image of a cross, it still points to that figure of Christ without that misinterpretation. Now, that's not to say we shouldn't use figurative imagery. Obviously our family does a lot of that, and it's still good. But symbolism is important. And I'll use just a couple of examples here. This is the church, one of the churches I grew up in. I went to Notre Dame Elementary, which is now St. Francis Cabrini, but it was located at St. Francis de Sales at that time. So this is the interior of St. Francis de Sales. This is where I learned to serve Mass. I would sit dutifully right here. And Father Boskoff and Father Cormac would be saying Mass. And I would be looking up, and you can't see it, but there's a window right here. There's windows here, on this wall, and on this wall. And so, naturally, as a fifth grader, you're just zoning out, looking at the windows. And one of those windows was that of St. Thomas Aquinas. And he's holding a chalice, right? And with a host right above it. Obviously, I remember this image of St. Thomas Aquinas. It was always beautiful to me. I remember just the artistry in it. But it wasn't until 10 years ago, when I was restoring this window up close and personal, that I noticed something. I mean, obviously you see the veins in his hands, that's all very expertly done. But what I noticed was the chalice. And if you can't see it, I've got it close up in the next slide. But the chalice in his hand, that's my cue. The chalice in his hand has a reflection of the nave in the church. Mind you, this is around 30 feet in the air, at a position where most people can't see it. So that, if you can't see it, these are the windows in the nave of the church, and I've got an image looking backwards. That's what it is looking at. what is beautiful about this, there's symbolism in this. It's not just a neat little trick of the eye. What is beautiful about this is that it is using this idea of the mystical body of Christ, the church, body of Christ, the church, and the sacramental body of Christ in the Eucharist. It's conflating these two images, and it's saying that we are one as a church through our participation in the Eucharist. If you're Catholic, that's the belief. But that is such a beautiful little image to work with and to contemplate upon. And it's something that that's why I want people to, whenever they go into a new church, to really study those windows. Like, don't just pass it by. Okay, so I'm going to go quickly through a couple of, oh, that one's good one too. This one, okay, so this is some windows we did at the Catholic Studies Center in SLU. It's the family of Saint Therese of Lisieux. That was, Saint Therese of Lisieux is a doctor of the church, was canonized over 100 years ago. But her parents were just canonized recently. So now there's kind of this push within Catholic circles to kind of recognize her parents as well and have this kind of family portrait. Well, okay, having a family portrait's one thing, but we wanted to do more than that. So we depicted her mother. Her mother was a lace maker, and her father was a watchmaker. So in the halo, and it's hard to see that far back, in the halo, her halo design is much more in a lacy quality. And the father, his halo is in the shape of gears. And then Saint Therese of Lisieux, her halo, because she's Saint Therese of the Little Flower, is in the shape of lilies. There are a lot more things hidden than you can possibly imagine. Oh boy, okay, one more. This is for St. Meinrad's Arch Abbey. It's a Benedictine. I'm sorry, I'm using a lot of Catholic symbolism and imagery here. But at St. Meinrad's Arch Abbey, they have a chapter room. It's where all the monks meet for their spiritual conferences with the abbot. So the windows there, and if you haven't been there, you get a chance to take a trip out there. It's a gorgeous campus. The windows there depict the rule of Saint Benedict. It is the written rule in the 5th century, by which pretty much all the old line monastic communities live by. And one of the principal rules is that of obedience. So they wanted us to make a series of windows depicting the rule of Saint Benedict, and obedience was one of them. How do you depict obedience? That is such a hard, it's kind of an abstract thing. Like if you have just one image, kind of on his knees and then an abbot blessing him or whatever, you might confuse that with a particular person or a particular historical instance. But how do you depict obedience? So we came up with the idea of the sunflower, which is a heliocentric flower. As the sun moves during the course of a day, the head of the flower will actually turn towards the sun. So you have it obeying the direction of the sun. So not every symbol has to be from the traditional dictionary. There's legitimate usages and inventions of symbolism. Every symbol at one point was new. And sometimes it was also controversial. So to me, it's this idea, again, of comparing it to poetry, right? Does that line, that sonnet, actually strike to the core of the message? And that's what we try to do at our studio. And it's something that our patrons have been very, very cooperative with, because they want that. Because every time, I want to go to one, okay, okay. I will stay here as long as you guys want. This is one that I really love. It's one for the little kids. that kind of designed it for little kids. That we were asked to do some windows on parables. And, you're kind of condensing a long narrative into one image. How do you do that? Some of these parables go on very long. This one wasn't the longest of them, but it was still a challenging one that my grandpa did. So I'll just kind of describe it. So this is being drawn from Matthew 19. It is easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter into the kingdom of heaven, depicted by the mystical rose. Right? Okay, well, here's the thing. When I look at this the first time, even myself, I probably wouldn't elicit that response, but after the 10th time, or the 20th time, or maybe the 100th time, I'm like, oh my goodness, that's exactly what it is. And then I get excited. And then I share it with my parents, or my spouse, or my kids, whomever. Now at this point, I am the evangelist. I am participating in the work of Christ. I am participating in that missionary call. And this is really at root what we do in our studio. It is much in the role of St. John the Baptist, right? Point others to Christ through beauty, right? He must increase, I must decrease. This is what art at its best does. And I mean, it's when you do it well and you hear that response, it's all you can say is, well, thank you, but there's something else going on here that I don't understand either. So I can talk about many other things here, but I do want to spend some time, because my phone alarm went off, talking about this window. Designed by my grandfather, Robert Frei, who died in 2016. So you might be doing the math here. This window was only installed, 2020, I think? 2019? So it was actually a window that was intended for another community, but was never utilized because they never went forward with their building commission. But it was so beautiful that I presented it to the committee, and they said, yeah, actually, we really love this. It fits the needs of our space, the style that we're going for. And it's always been a design I wanted to do. And so when you look at this, it's just demanding your attention. But as soon as you notice that, you notice the cross, right? Then you notice the cross, and then you notice it going downward, and then extending upward. And then if you're a very observant viewer, you will also notice towards the bottom, obscured a little bit by some beautiful succulents, I might add. I'm a big plant nerd. You got some lithops over here. That's beautiful. With some roots. There are some roots at the bottom. Okay, so obviously the cross, sacrifice of Christ on the cross. The red being a symbol of passion, love, blood of life. The blood that pours forth new life. But also it's using this image of the cross as the tree of life, right? So in Genesis, we have this image of Adam and Eve eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, which is not the tree of life. It's the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And they were expelled from the garden because they would be tempted to eat from the tree of life, which would then also make them sinful and immortally separated from God. Right? So Christ redeems mankind by climbing the wood of the cross, the new tree of life. And this is a kind of a consistent typology or image used by St. Paul especially throughout his letters is that this Christ is the fulfillment of all the Old Testament. He undoes everything in the Old Testament, but he does it correctly. So it's called the theory of recapitulation. So it basically means that Christ reheads the wrong decisions. So Christ says yes, complete yes to God, whereas Adam and Eve said no. So you have this idea of the cross as the tree of life. And then also, what is beautiful is that you have the arms of this tree circling the cross. So this is also, I think, a very legitimate interpretation would be, in John 15, you have Christ saying, I am the vine, you are the branches. Remain in me as I remain in the Father. So this idea that also being incorporated into Christ means being centered on Christ, right? And then that's life. The roots kind of going downward, digging into the earth, right? And then you have this image of blue and green. Blue typically symbolizing baptismal waters, green typically symbolizing life itself. So you have all of these things. They're very subtly stated, but they're also, the impact here is more just upon a singular, elegant image that you can legitimately bring all your sufferings, all your joy, all your experiences to, and just marvel in the simplicity of it. So again, it's a little bit more like an open-ended poem, I guess. I keep coming back to poetry. It's because I married a woman who loves poetry. But yeah. So a couple of features outside of that, I'll just point out. There are some pieces up here, and it's always okay to come up, I think, unless, masses or some services going on. But you'll notice some of this glass has what looks like kind of spider webs on it. That's called a crackle glass, all right? And we use quite a bit of that here. You'll notice a lot of Blanco down lower, and a lot of CD glass down lower too. It's kind of I did that intentionally in order to obscure some of the building in the background. And there's a lot that we plan for when we are cutting windows. I need to know, is it a north-facing window, a south-facing window? Because it's going to be remarkably different materials that I use and depths of color when I'm cutting it. Also, let's see. Yeah, your Remy glass, this piece here and that piece with the really big bubble. You'll see a really big bubble here. That's a French Remy. There's so many things. Most of it is German because, again, I'm biased. I'm German. Germans are the best at crafts. But most of it's German, but a lot of it is just a smattering of different nations too. And that's gorgeous as well.
Is that glass all from Huntington?
None of the glass is from Huntington.
Oh, it's not?
No.
From overseas?
It's from, so the only glass from America is, I can even just point it out, this, and this one, and this one. That's the only stuff, and that's from West Virginia, and that's in Milton, West Virginia. Yeah. But I'll take any more questions, yes.
What is your reasoning for the diagonal going this way, and then I see it going that way?
Yeah.
Do you-
That's just a purely aesthetic way, yeah. So we get this question a lot, like, why did you include 5 stars versus 7, right? And I'm always a little remiss to say, because it looks better. But that's a lot of times the reason. Yeah, there's, a lot of people will try to overread stuff into it, and I don't mind that. You know, it's kind of like bring your imagination to it, and there's no better crowd for that than little kids.
I'm intrigued by the tiny eye at the center of the cross.
Yes. That's mostly to simply have a depiction of, without depicting the corpus, right? To designate that, you know, it's the body of Christ. So the cross without the crucifix means nothing. You know, this is in Romans, unless he has, you know, died, your faith is in vain. So, but it's also a way to get around, because different denominations will object to different depictions of the cross. Yeah. I am so open for questions. Yes?
I'm into the tree of life.
Mhm.
Can you go up there and point out the trunk, you know,
Yeah. So this is the cross here, and it comes down, this darker, almost black, but not quite black. And then you see the roots kind of spreading out here, and then the branches of the tree kind of traveling up. Yeah. And then, you know, it's depending, you know, your denominational flavor, you can also look at this white space as more of a Eucharistic host. So it can convey many different meanings without being so, you know, dogmatic in any one direction. Yes.
A priest once told us and us that window there is Jesus looking at us.
Yeah. So the comment was that a priest once said in Mass that this is Jesus looking at us. I think whenever you encounter a cross, I mean, that is also the case, but especially poignant here is that there is that small fleck of light, which is almost like an eye looking at you. And I mean, honestly, this is at the heart of the cross, right? That Christ's sacrifice, his total self-gift, was in light, with full knowledge of all our sins. That God knows all, and that he dies for all men, all time.
How do you fuse the sections of glass together so they don't come apart?
So the question is, how do you fuse the sections of glass together so that they don't come apart? The answer is we don't actually fuse them. We use a lead matrix. Lead came. A lead is in the shape of an H or an I, depending on how you look at it. So it slides into a pocket, and then the lead, we use lead for 3 reasons. It doesn't rust, corrode, or oxidize. It is very long lasting, and it's very malleable, so you can bend it. So we'll bend lead around each piece. That's all these dark lines. These aren't painted lines here, it's lead. So we'll actually bend the lead around each piece of glass, and then we'll solder each joint using a red oil flux and some solder. And that's how you kind of combine this puzzle together. It is very much like building a puzzle on a table.
We got a question back here.
Yes.
You talked about Blinko. We live 30 minutes from Blinko in West Virginia.
Yeah.
Now, I hope I didn't hear you say that they're no longer blowing glass.
No, they are blowing glass, but the sheet glass, they've really almost gone out of that interest.
So where do you get the blue cobalt?
So we get almost all of our glass from Germany, France, and Poland now.
Okay,
Yeah.
because of course, we always took everybody to Blinko to see the glass, yeah.
It was a it's, the remnants are still there, but it was a remarkable place. I used to go there. Dad would take us for camping trips and business trips, right? It was really a business trip. And then we would tour the factory there.
Yeah.
And it's changed hands now 4 times within the last 20 years.
And of course, they have the glass in the Air Force Academy, correct?
That's Dol de Verre glass.
Yeah.
So they used Dol de Verre glass made by Blanco, but Blanco did not make those windows. It was just their glass
Just
that
the
was
glass,
used. Yeah.
yes.
Mhm.
Well, we have a church in Sullivan that did a new sanctuary, and Scotty was on the building committee, and Indian Creek Glass, was it Indian Creek Glass, did the glass work there, but they got the blue from Blanco, so,
Yeah. Well, there's still a lot of their stuff online and on eBay and from other people selling it that had large stocks. But the Dol de Verres, I think they are still making.
How long did it take you to make the window?
So this window, usually this process is extremely collaborative. So on about any project, we'll have 6 pairs of hands, expert hands, doing work on it. So designing, cutting, assembling the window is called glazing, cementing, that's the waterproofing stage, the inclusion of reinforcing bars. So steel reinforcing bars are added throughout this window. You can't really see them because we disguised them following the strong lead lines. And then installation. I did 5 of those 6 steps myself. This was kind of a labor of love for me, to be honest, because my grandpa had just passed, and I just always he loved this design and lamented that it never got a chance to be made. So I wanted to do most of it. So just about every stage of this, I did it, and it was in, a couple months, 3 months.
Okay.
Yeah,
Good.
yeah,
Well, thank you so much, it's wonderful, thank you.
yeah, you're welcome. Yes.
Do we give tours of your studio?
So the question is, do we give tours of the studios? If we did, I would be a permanent tour giver, and we wouldn't be making stained glass windows anymore. So we give tours to patrons and to educational institutions like seminaries. But to the general public, we've had to just kind of make a policy where we can't, because any given week I'll have 3 or 4 requests, and I would love to, because we feed off of the interest, but we don't have the time. If we turn off our phones today, we're still busy for the next 5 years.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So.
I do have another question. How many of your family is working with you?
So I have 3 siblings that work with me, and then my father still works with me. Then, like I said, Grandpa died in 2016. My Uncle Dave died in 2024. And so, yeah, down to now 4 Fries at the studio. But we're the first generation to have like multiple siblings go into it. So it makes for an interesting dynamic. We actually do get along very, very well. Yeah, everyone says, "Oh, that must be horrible." And I said, no, it actually says more about the person saying the question. That's what I love about our studio, is that I wake up every day and I'm excited to go into work, and I'm excited to work with my siblings, because we each have our own particular skill set. And there's no one that's yearning to be boss. And Sometimes, I am the boss, so I should be yearning to do that. but it works out very, very well. We were 5 kids in 5.5 years in our family, so we had to grow up either very tightly together or not at all.
Do you have any children to take over for you?
Okay, I've got 2 questions. The first one was, do I have any children? I do not. We've been, keep us in your prayers. So we're trying. But we do have Generation 6. There are 12 within Generation 6. And yeah, so there'll be more to come. So hopefully another 4 or 5. Yes, the question in the back again was?
Oh, it is outside people.
Outside people. So when I started working at the studio, it was my dad, Michael, Dave, Jeff, and Grandpa. That's 4 people. And then now we are at 17 and growing. So it's gotten, we actually have grown so much that we had to build a new studio on the same property in Kirkwood, but we had to build a new studio because we just outgrew the space.
And where is the studio?
We are located, the studio is located in Kirkwood, and we're in the Sugar Creek Valley. You will never find us even if you try. We have no signage at the bottom of our drive. We have 10 wooded acres. And as Father Jack Costello, who was a pastor at St. Peter's in Kirkwood, always said that we were Keebler elves in the woods. Because we would just pump out so much work, and he didn't believe that one small company located in the woods could do so much.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
If there's nothing else, I can stick around for another 5 or 10 minutes to answer some questions, but outside of that, thank you so much.
Thank you.
For everything.